Okay, we will start with the invocation. And so please, Lord, help us get through this very, very, very difficult time of COVID-19. It's as an old guy, it's awkward for me to not be doing this in person as we have done for many, many years. So help us get through this. Help the citizens of Canby get through all of the difficult times that we're going through right now, and help the commissioners make wise decisions that are in the best interest of the citizens of Canby. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll start with citizen input on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for audience members to address the Planning Commission on items not on the agenda. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. You are first required to call or email the recording secretary at 503-266-0685 or FOUSE, FOUSEL, at cambyoregon.gov prior to noon on Monday, August 10th, 2020, to request a Zoom invite so that you may speak. Staff and the Planning Commission will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizen input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible. So do we have any citizens in the ether out there that you know of? Doesn't sound like we have any. Minutes, there are none at this time. New business, none at this time. So we will move on to the public hearing. But that's not showing up on my agenda, Ryan. I mean, I've got it in front of me. Okay, there we go. To testify at a public hearing, you are first required to call or email the recording secretary at 503-266-0685 or FOUSEL at cambyoregon.gov prior to noon on Monday, August 10th, 2020, to request a Zoom invite so that you may speak. So the first item is we are going to consider a proposed project consisting of 160 new residential units with all associated infrastructure necessary for the expansion of the South Campus Hope Village. That's City File DR/CUP/PUD 20-01 Hope Village South Campus Expansion. And that has been requested that we push that out to get an extension and pushed out to September 14th, 2020. Is that correct?
This is Senior Planner Ryan Potter. Yes, that is correct. However, we do need to open this for a public hearing because it was noticed for today. So if there's anyone seeking to provide comments.
Okay, I will do that right now. Tonight, there are two matters before the hearing body that require a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matters. At the appropriate time, your name is called. Please state your name, address, and interest in the matter. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each, the opponents will be given 5 minutes each, and those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence must be to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become a part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan of the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it is only to concur with previous testimony. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. As far as I know, the commissioners in attendance are Derek Motrin, Jeff Mills, and Jennifer Trundy. Do any of you have any conflicts?
I believe Jason Taylor is also on. You might want to run through all of the names.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, I'm on here as well.
Okay, Jason, sorry, I did not know that.
Michael
So,
Hutchinson is here as well.
Okay, Michael, thank you. So Michael, Jeff, Jason, Jennifer, Derek, are there any conflicts that you are aware of?
This is Derek. No.
Mr. Boatwright, you don't look like you have a conflict either.
No, I don't have a conflict. Thank you, John.
Okay,
Jason Taylor, I have no conflict.
okay,
Jeff Mills, no conflict.
okay,
Jennifer Trundy, no conflict.
okay,
Michael
Oh.
Hutchinson, no conflict.
okay. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of that contact. And now I see the note that I'm supposed to call you out by name. So Michael, any ex parte contact?
I rode by the site on my motorcycle last week, and that is all.
And you probably felt good about a motorcycle ride.
I wasn't paying attention to the site, no.
Jason, any ex parte contact?
None whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, any ex parte contact?
No.
Jeff, any ex parte contact?
No.
Derek, any ex parte contact?
No, sir.
Larry, any ex parte contact?
Nope.
And since we apparently don't have anybody any guest, I'm going to assume that they have no comment for any commissioner regarding conflict of interest or ex parte contact. So the public hearing will be conducted as follows. First, we'll have the staff report. Then we'll have questions by the hearing body or staff. And then I will open public hearing for testimony. The applicant will have not more than 15 minutes. The proponents, other proponents, not more than 5 minutes each. Opponents, not more than 5 minutes each. Those that think they are neutral, not more than 5 minutes each. And then the applicant will have 10 minutes for rebuttal. At that time, we will close the public testimony. Then any questions by the commissioners? Discussion and deliberation by the commissioners. No additional testimony unless specifically allowed by the chair. And then a decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Any questions? Okay.
And so, Chair Savory, this is Ryan Potter.
Yes.
So I'll emphasize here that we just, this is an opportunity to take public comments, if there are any, but otherwise we will be continuing this item to a date certain on September 14th.
Right. The first item, which is the Hope Village South Campus extension.
Correct.
Expansion. Okay. So now we will consider a partition of a 20.2 acre property into 3 equal parcels and construct 3 speculative light industrial buildings ranging from 46,800 square feet to 210,600 square feet. City file number DR 20-02 and PAR 20-02 Baker Center. So, staff report.
All right, good evening, Chair Savory and Planning Commissioners. I'm going to briefly go over the staff report and the procedures for this project. So up on the screen right now, you should see the applicable criteria, and these are what staff use to make a recommendation on the project. And these include provisions of the code related to design review and partitions. So the existing conditions of the project site for this project is on Southeast First Avenue between Hazeldale Way and South Walnut Street. It's located in our industrial park near some of our more recent projects. Canby Distributing is directly to the east across South Walnut. And like those nearby properties, it's zoned for light industrial uses, and it's within the overlay zone for our industrial area. This is an aerial showing the context of the site. You can see that it's undeveloped and vacant right now. It's surrounded by a mixture of vacant, agricultural, light industrial, and other uses. You can see that it's a couple blocks away from 99E, which is on the left side of the screen, and then Columbia Distributing is immediately to the east. And to the south is Zor Cemetery and other light industrial properties. So the proposed facility is a speculative light industrial development project. It would be 3 buildings, each on their own parcel, upon approval of the partition. And you can see on the table on the screen that each building and each parcel would be a different size, but they would be meant to accommodate approximately 8 suites for future tenants that would include light industrial or warehousing projects. And this is the proposed partition map, and you can see that parcel 1 and parcel 2 are next to South Walnut Street. This is rotated, so north is to the left. And then the bigger parcel, parcel 3, is adjacent to just Southeast First Avenue. Here is the proposed site plan. You can see it's 3 relatively large buildings, each on their own parcel. You can see the parking is distributed around the perimeter of the buildings. And the loading areas are meant to face into the interior of the lot or of the property. So the 2 buildings at the top, building A and B, the loading areas kind of face the interior of the overall parcel. And then the larger building, building C, its loading areas would face towards the rear of industrial properties to the west of this project site. So they're kind of designed to not face outward into the public realm. You can also see the darker yellow are the ancillary office spaces. So each tenant space would be expected to have its own front office, and these are linked to Walnut and First through pedestrian connections that link the sidewalks along the adjacent roadways to those offices. 5 of those actually front towards the public realm, which is what our code encourages and requires. Only a few on building C would face more internally, but that's just the nature of this type of development. This is a perspective drawing of the project, and you can see a little of what it would look like from First Avenue and Walnut. This is a more 3D image that shows a little more how it would look in 3D. I will note here that the landscaping is obviously not fully shown here, so there would be layered landscaping between the parking areas and the public street. But you can see that the office faces towards the street and has a pedestrian connection that cuts through. So in the staff report, we analyzed the project against all the pieces of the code that I mentioned previously. These are largely having to do with site and design review, partitions, and then the zoning and overlay zone that this property is located in. So we analyzed for consistency with that criteria. In this case, the proposed use is exactly what we would expect in this particular zone, and it's allowed. It would accommodate the types of projects intended for this zone under the development concept plan for the area. The design of the buildings is consistent with provisions of the code, including being under the max height. And like I mentioned before, the main entrances largely face public streets. Parking based on the type of use, although it is speculative, we use the broad categories of light industrial to calculate how many parking spaces would be required. 354 would be required. The initial site plan submitted to the city had 392. And then I'll get into this a little bit later, but the applicant has provided an updated site plan in response to some of the conditions of approval in the staff report. So that number has been tweaked a little bit, but I'll get to that. Traffic, it's estimated that the uses that would be located in this project would generate approximately 949 overall daily vehicle trips. But as the traffic study goes through, these would not be anticipated to trigger any new unacceptable levels of service at area intersections. And this is something obviously we discuss with a lot of projects, and I know from the last one that we just did, Redwood Landing 2, we had this discussion about, isn't that a lot of trips? And obviously that is a large number, but based on the thresholds of significance and the capacity of the roadways that would be affected, the level of service would not be triggered to be unacceptable based on city, state, and county standards. And it's also important to note that those trips would be distributed throughout the day, and the staff report goes over how many of those would be during peak AM and PM time periods. So street alignments, this is something we analyze because in our industrial park, some of the roads do need to be upgraded to serve the industrial park. In this case, the project is designed to meet our conditions, which would require half-street improvements on Southeast First Avenue and South Walnut. So those would both be upgraded to serve this project and the surrounding area. But you'll note in the staff report, we talked about a conceptual location of a roundabout, because directly adjacent to this project site is where the city is planning a new industrial connector road between the industrial park and 99E. And this project does not conflict with that. We just had some conditions that made sure there was consistency with that design of that future infrastructure. So correspondence received, we got 2 sets of agency comments, one from the consulting city engineer, and these outlined all the requirements for public improvements. And then the city, or Canby Fire rather, submitted comments on fire protection services and fire hydrants. We received 2 public comments, one from Zor Lutheran Cemetery that's directly to the south. They mentioned some concerns about construction and operation of a project near the cemetery, and then they expressed the fact that they have heard in the past that there's been some grave sites located outside cemeteries. So I'll go over this a little bit later, but we did include a condition of approval that would require the applicant to be sensitive to that issue. So standard conditions of approval, there's 44. Most of these are standard conditions of approval that you would see on any project of this type and location. There's conditions of approval specifically addressing the Half Street improvements on First and Walnut. There are conditions requiring consistency with standards related to bicycle parking and landscaping and parking. So one of the things that wasn't shown in the original submittal was bike parking. And then we have a requirement that rows of the maximum number of spaces in a row of parking should be ideally 8. And so the applicant, after release of the staff report, basically submitted a revised, several revised exhibits showing that this could easily be met. So they'll have, consistent with our conditions, they'll have bike parking at all the entrances. And then also they've added landscape islands in response to that condition. And then lastly, I just highlighted the one about discovery and handling of human remains in the unlikely event that there was a gravesite located outside the nearby cemetery. So after release of the staff report, and based on the additional exhibits that we received from the applicant, we have one additional condition the staff is recommending. And so this 45th condition is not in the staff report. So this is the first time you're seeing it. And this is just to make sure that the common parking, which would surround the entire development, but would be split amongst the different parcels. This is just requiring that there be a reciprocal maintenance and parking sharing agreement that would be recorded along with the final plat. And this would just make sure that there's coordination with shared parking. And then this last exhibit, I just wanted to show you that this was provided by the applicant based on drawings provided to them from our city engineer, just showing that the future alignment of the roundabout for the future industrial road will not conflict with the design of this project, which would be on the lower left. But they will dedicate the required extra sliver of space on the final plat when it gets to that point that will accommodate the city's alignment for that facility. So based on the staff report and the facts and findings and conclusions found in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve application DR 2002 and Partition 20-02. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Great presentation. Does anybody have any questions at this time? I have a question. So with 949 daily vehicle trips, in addition to the 1,600 daily vehicle trips coming out of the Shakespeare Project and Columbia Distributing, for a total of, nearly 2,700 vehicle trips, and they're all kind of lumped together as being an acceptable level of traffic. That seems to be an acceptable level to DKS in the city. So I'm curious, this is a general point maybe, at what point, how much traffic, I guess at what point is it triggered that there is too much? Is there a number? I'd like a number. Not just saying something out in the future that each one seems to be a little more acceptable. I think that now that we've got an awful lot of traffic coming out of that area, I think it's important for us to know what is an acceptable level of traffic. What is a specific number that we can put our finger on that says, okay, that and no more.
I don't have an exact number for you. I do know the city, along with DKS, has prepared a sensitivity analysis to see at which point the future industrial collector road would be needed. I believe that said about 10 or 15 years out based on build out of our industrial park. But I don't have that in front of me, so I can't tell you the exact numbers that contributed to that conclusion.
Well, I think that, in 10 or 15 years, there's a good chance that some of us, including myself, will have assumed room temperature. And so, but I think that it's important for the people of Canby that are already complaining about the traffic on 99 and coming out of this. I think it's important for us to know long before 10 or 15 years what that number is. I'm not objecting to the project. The project looks fine. But I think that it's important that, we let the people of Canby know as all of these projects come to fruition over the next couple of years, just what that number is. And I think that 10 or 15 years is an unreasonable length of time. In fact, an extremely unreasonable length of time for us to be getting that answer. So let's see if we can move that up by, let's say, many years, like 9 to 14 years. 14 years. I'd like to, within the next year or so, get that answer. I think that it's incumbent upon the Planning Commission to have that number so that we can make good decisions for the people of Canby and the people that travel through Canby. Because it's with all the tolling that's going to be going on, traffic is going to be horrendous. We know that it's going to be horrendous, but there comes a point where it moves beyond that. And so maybe you can get with, everybody else at in the planning department and DKS, and maybe by our next meeting, give us a ballpark estimate. I don't care if it's Yankee Stadium or Canby High School Stadium. But I think that we should have a number. I mean, does that sound reasonable? I mean, I think that that's reasonable.
Yes, and I would note that I spoke just a minute ago with the sensitivity analysis. I just wanted to make it clear that the city's not waiting for that interval of time before pursuing the industrial connector road. The efforts are already underway to make that happen sooner. And then I also, this isn't necessarily answering your question, but I just wanted to note that also this particular project, they will be paying the SDCs that any normal project would need to pay, but they'll also be improving First and Walnut, and that might not. I know your concern is a larger concern about the overall network, but I just wanted to emphasize that this particular project will be upgrading the street network directly adjacent to their project for the future growth in vehicle trips.
Oh, okay. That answer will suffice for now, but be assured that at every single meeting, I'm going to be asking that question. And I will ask it, and I will ask it, because that's a lot of traffic. I mean, you have to admit, that's a lot of traffic. And it's all going to go on 99. Eventually, it all feeds down into a 99 that's showing a lot of wear and tear. So I'm going to ask the question again and again, and not to belabor the point too much, but I think that it just is a gentle reminder that we need an answer. How's that sound? Is that fair?
Understood. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair
So-
Savory, Commissioner Taylor here.
Yes. Jason.
And I agree with that. I also wanted to point out that even just in the numbers that you've been going over, that we're talking about in a matter of half a day and 12 hours, that's 225 vehicles an hour that will be increased there. One of the questions that I have for Ryan as well is in regard to the extension that's going to be going from Walnut and across over to 99. What, if anything, has been updated? Some of the last questions that we had, this was back in, I believe in March.
I'm sorry, you cut out
We
there
didn't
for a
have
little
any,
bit.
oh, I'm sorry.
Could
Can you hear me?
repeat the last 2 or 3 sentences? I'm sorry.
So in regard to the connector road between Walnut and 99E, we spoke about that back in March, but we didn't have any clear answers as to when that might be happening. That's one important feature, I think, that's going to help in determining how traffic patterns and things of this nature are going to look for the future.
Right.
Do you have any update on that?
I don't have a specific update on that project at this point. No.
Because that's something that is also another critical factor, in my opinion. So that's something that also, along with Chair's concerns, I think we need to keep asking.
Yeah.
Commissioner Savory, this is Jeff
Yes.
Mill. I had a
Jeff?
question for staff. I note in this in the staff report that there's several areas where we see that there are general conditions associated with the overlay, for example, employment levels of employment and allowed use. And then there's also some conditions of approval that, for example, traffic flow restrictions, which I guess I have a concern about, and my question to staff is, how do you envision enforcement of those provisions, given that these are speculative, we don't know who the tenants are, when they're coming, and so I'm having trouble understanding how enforcement can occur on these items.
To be honest, I think that is something that is hard to police, especially for employees going to and from a workplace. That's not really something that cities like to get in the business of managing. So the condition of approval related to Haynes Road, which I think might be what you're referring to, was similar to ones that we had required on other projects such as Stanton and Stanton Furniture and Caruso Produce, just because the Haynes interchange north of town is obviously a known issue that is sort of out of the control of the city. So we don't, that intersection is not in the city, it's county roads. They intersect a state highway, but we just included that condition as the one chance that we think we could have to influence a little bit which direction trucks are coming and going. But obviously, as the improvements are done on the streets that are adjacent to Caruso and Stanton and this project and Shakespeare, our roads are being built out incrementally, and with the future addition of the connector road, there will be more options for getting to and from 99.
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I have one question real quick.
Sure.
This is Commissioner Taylor. I have a question about that, again, I guess, that interchange that you're talking about, the circular interchange. It feels a little bit like this is cart before the horse kind of situation, in my opinion, because of what you just brought up, with the fact that we have employees going to and from these particular areas. It's a little difficult to understand, because in looking at the mapping around there, you can kind of see the way most people are going to go is going to be the most convenient. Nobody's going to automatically take the least convenient road to get in and out of there. So it seems incumbent upon us to come up with maybe some kind of better plan, and I don't know what that is right now, but I feel like we're really going to be really restricting some of these roadways with traffic, or burdening them with extra traffic that we have no control over. Does that make sense?
Yes, the development concept plan for the industrial park puts a lot of emphasis on not bleeding out traffic from the industrial park, if trying to limit that as much as possible, which is the reason Sequoia is really designed to kind of snake through the industrial park. So that a lot of the projects that we've seen in the last couple of years, we've really tried to give the vehicles a route to get to Sequoia so that they can get to 99 through that lighted intersection. So it's really trying to pull the traffic internally and then out that major roadway that is within the city. And so I think in this case, it is a little different than some of the other ones that we've seen that are adjacent to the county on the west. In this case, this project is directly adjacent to Walnut, which is almost built out as its classified street section for trucks to go south on Walnut in the interim before the industrial connector connects north to 99. So I would suspect the easiest route of travel from this site would actually be to go from Walnut to Sequoia. And those are roads that we have conditioned the projects along the way to expand. And so unlike maybe the Shakespeare project that we've all referred to was kind of in an island of unimproved streets, this one's just a little bit different in that it is adjacent to Walnut, which takes you to Sequoia and out to 99. But I should also mention that the traffic study did study two scenarios, one with the the future industrial connector road where Walnut connects through, and one without. And it found that it wasn't triggering any of those intersections either way. So that analysis is in the traffic study. When I talk about the Walnut Road connecting through, that's not really, whether that happens soon or not doesn't change the conclusions in the traffic study, which found that, at least from a quantitative standpoint, the area intersections aren't being triggered either way. That isn't to say that you won't experience more traffic in that area, because obviously you will, but based on the thresholds that have been allocated to all those intersections based on the classification of roadway, they aren't being triggered by the contribution of this project.
You mentioned threshold. This is Commissioner Taylor again. That's kind of what Chair Savory was asking about, I believe. So if you know those thresholds and that's what's in the traffic study, then, and you're saying we're within those, then isn't that I guess that would be the answer, right?
Right. I think Chair Savory is also kind of concerned about a more qualitative, and you can correct me if I'm interpreting that wrong, the qualitative experience of driving in that area, and at which point do we separate from our official criteria that come from the state and the county and our transportation system plan. At what point do we consider that too much traffic?
Well, the qualitative question was only part of the more pertinent question that I had. This is Chair Savory. The more pertinent question is, I want to know what that threshold exactly is, because it seems to be a moving target. And you know, if once we know what that threshold is, then we can make better decisions. I'm unsure sometimes whether we're actually making really good decisions. I mean, not on the projects themselves, but on the ancillary effects, like traffic of the projects. The projects look beautiful, on and on and on, but when you're adding 1,600, 1,000, 500 trips per day, and we don't know what that threshold is. As far as I know, we've already passed that threshold long ago with the Shakespeare project. We don't know.
Well, the traffic study does, and I apologize that I can't tell you them off the top of my head, but there's grades of level of service. So there's A, B, C, D, F, and if you look at the traffic study, it shows that the contribution of this project, those area intersections will still be at A if they were at A before, or B if they were B before. And so that's part of what the traffic study is analyzing, is the change over the background traffic that's happening without the project.
Chair Savory.
Yes, Mr. Boatwright.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Boatwright. And I was just over there this afternoon at the intersection coming from Fred Meyer's. And it took me about 10 minutes to get through there, and the Shakespeare project hasn't even started their trucks. The problem is all of those trucks, I'm not worried about how the streets can handle it. I'm worried about the intersections and the people sitting at those intersections waiting for those trucks to get through the light at Fred Meyer's and then the light at 99E. I don't think it's going to be a good situation. I have problems with us looking at this other road to connect from Walnut to 99E maybe in 14 or 15 years. I think it needs to be done way sooner than later. I personally believe we may have I myself with these traffic studies am highly skeptical of them. I don't know how they grade these roads. I mean, the roads are nice, but when your traffic doesn't move, that's an F to me. And when those trucks start rolling out of Shakespeare, that intersection, they may be going up Walnut, Sequoia, and then back north to 99E, but that's going to be backed up trucks all the way to Shakespeare from 99E. The only good thing about it is hopefully they'll be early in the morning. So I'm really skeptical of this, how the traffic people grade these highways. I don't think they're taking the congestion into consideration like they should be, especially if they put a toll on I-205. That's just my personal belief about this. Thank you.
Chair Savory,
Yes.
Commissioner Trendy here. May I suggest that we table the traffic discussion for now and maybe have a meeting set up with the planning staff and city council to get answers to some of these questions you all have raised, and so we can move forward with the discussion at hand?
That is, Jennifer, that is a great suggestion, and one that I have presented time and time again. We get to have a meeting about once every 2 years with the city folks, and it lasts an hour, which is not nearly enough time. So I would be all in favor of setting aside some time, a good length of time, just to discuss this, because I never get satisfactory answers, and you've been in those meetings as well. I don't know that anybody gets satisfactory answers. So
Is our council representative on? I can't see all the names. Maybe he could take that back to city council for us.
This is Ryan Potter, senior planner. I think the idea of a work session is actually a great idea, and I think we could actually invite DKS, which is our traffic consultant, to actually attend that, because I think a lot of these things, they would be the best people to answer the questions for their algorithms and their model and how they model traffic. So I think that's a great idea for a later date.
So I'm perfectly willing to and happy to call the mayor directly and request this meeting to be set up. And I will do that tomorrow. Unless you think that is inappropriate and you have a better way of setting this up.
I think it might be best if we do a little strategizing within house and then see what the best course of action is.
Okay, so that's great. How much time do you anticipate you're going to need to strategize on this and get back to us?
I would say next meeting that we have, which is September 14th, we could circle back then, because I believe we're not holding a meeting on the 24th, right? Yeah.
That would be a dandy time though, to have this meeting, have DKS come in, have the city council come in. I mean, we've already got that on our schedules. That's just a suggestion.
Yeah, Laney's going to come down and talk maybe a little bit about scheduling. I'm going to pass it off to her.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Um,
Lynn.
One of the problems with inviting DKS is that we will need to pay for them, pay for their time. Because we had this meeting about, it's probably been a couple of years ago that we had the meeting with DKS here.
And that's right. I remember that. And the questions that we had a couple of years ago are still with us today, still haunting us today.
We can certainly find out what it would cost, but like Ryan said, we'll need to get back to you.
Okay. That's fair, but let's not dawdle. Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions for the staff? If not, we'll move on to hearing from the applicant. So is the applicant with us?
Yes, sir. Chairman Avery, this is Steve Sieber with Trammell Crow Company here. Can you hear me?
You bet.
Great. And just before we jump into Baker and some prepared comments, I just want to touch on the discussion about the transportation network at Pioneer Industrial Park is right on. I'm really glad you guys are focusing on that as an investor and developer in the area. Clearly with Baker, which is owned property, Shakespeare across the street, or it's kind of fun to hear it called Shakespeare still. We just call it Columbia Distributing now, but of course that facility, and we have under contract the large Wygant parcel to the south. So for us, this is of critical importance. And the fact that you guys are asking these types of questions is really important. And I really do like, Chairman, your question, which is what is that threshold? I think that's important. We think that that Walnut connection to 99 is critical to the success and the long-term livability of all that transportation network there. And I would just add on Shakespeare, and it was touched on earlier, if you all will remember, all of the outbound trips, so half of the truck trips out take place between essentially 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. So before there's too much traffic at the Fred Meyer and other places. That facility operates, essentially loads trucks starting in the evening all overnight, and then those things shotgun out across the state to make sure that store shelves and Safeways and things like that are stocked in the early morning. So those trips do come back. And just one other thought was a question about enforcement, and we put those things in our leases. It's really easy. Columbia was very willing to follow the constraints for the transportation network that were applied, similar to what we have here with Baker. It's easy for them to do. They have daily and weekly meetings with all their drivers, so they can instruct them. But Ryan touched on it. The one place that is very difficult to enforce is the employee coming or going, right? I mean, they're going to take the quickest route. And so that's something to consider. But anyways, I just thought that was worthwhile discussion there, and I just wanted to add those thoughts. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So thank you, Ryan, for your comments and the presentation. You did a great job presenting Baker Center. And I'd just start, of course, by saying thank you, Chairman Savory and the commissioners for the opportunity to present Baker Center for consideration of a site and design review approval and of a partition approval. My name's Steve Sieber with Trammell Crow Company, and with me virtually tonight are Greg Blefkin. You've heard from him before with Shakespeare from VLMK. He's our lead designer. He'll present a little bit more about the details of our project in a minute. We also have a couple of my colleagues from Trammell Crow, Dennis Arak and Kirk Olson. There might be a couple others on that I didn't see. who've been involved in the project. And then we have Alan Patterson from Capacity Commercial, who's one of our brokers, along with Terry Tools, to help us market and lease this proposed project. I won't share much about Trammell Crow. You've heard about it before, but I always like to remind people that we've been continuously operating in Oregon, investing and developing commercial real estate since 1978. We've always been, we haven't shut the doors. We've been here, and we also have a proud past. Our founder, Trammell Crow, started the business in Dallas, Texas in 1948. So I like to point that out. And just quickly about me, I grew up in Oregon, and this week I'm happy to say that I celebrated my 15th anniversary working for Trammell Crow here in Portland. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Tonight we're back in front of you with an industrial development for Pioneer Industrial Park. Not too long ago, I went back and looked, it was January of 2019. We were, I remember I had a heavy wool coat on when we came to present Project Shakespeare for approval in front of your commission. And now we're back with a great project. The success that we had at Shakespeare at Columbia Distributing, working with city teams and the community. Our tenant there is very happy. As was pointed out earlier, they're not operating yet. They're starting to load the building with their merchandise, but they don't plan to go live until October. But because of that success and the positive experience that we've had, and frankly, a strong industrial market, both in Portland and across the United States, we'd like to continue to develop and invest in Canby. It really is a good place for new businesses to come in and for investors in commercial real estate like ourselves. So as was mentioned by Ryan earlier, it's 20-acre industrial development, Baker Center. It's speculative in nature. It's got 3 buildings sized in a way that help us best meet the market. If you kind of notice there's 3 different sizes. They can be demised for different size tenants. We think this is a good offering to the industrial market. I'd also note that we have a partition here, and we'd like to partition. We're asking for approval to partition this single lot into 3 lots. One of the parts of the market that we sometimes see are businesses that have owners that would prefer to own the property and their building. And so we've set this development up not just to be able to lease to tenants with existing buildings or with new buildings, but also to sell parcels that could be developed and owned by business owners and users. We've had a lot of interest already in this project. We've fielded multiple inquiries, and we've responded to 3 RFPs already, so formal requests for proposals on these buildings, and one of which is a name that you would know very well. So some nice high quality tenants have already shown interest in the park. I'd also add that what we're proposing to do here is seek approval for the site and design review, partition, and with those approvals, if we were to receive those, then we would plan to begin improvements on the frontages and also provide the utilities to the site. And the business plan here is essentially to create a shovel-ready site. What's important for users is when they show up for a site tour, that it looks like it could be a building they can occupy, sooner rather than later. So that's also an intention that we have here. And with our investor, we would likely start this work in the winter or spring. That would also, as was mentioned earlier in some of the traffic network discussion, Walnut Street would then be improved along this frontage. We'd also have improvements along First which Project Shakespeare is already enhanced as a part of one of its requirements. And of course, the utilities to serve the site would also be built out. So that would enhance the infrastructure of Canby Pioneer Industrial Park. And then just lastly, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Morgan. I don't think he's on the phone, but of Zoar Lutheran Church for his comments related to the sensitivities and concerns around the adjacent cemetery parcel. We think we understand his comments, and we've taken them into consideration. So I do appreciate his comments, and it's something that we have thought about. And then just kind of lastly, before I turn it over to Greg to touch on some of the more detailed pieces of the development, I just want to thank Ryan and city staff. There's been a bunch of you, and it's changed a little bit since all these years that we've been going. But for your efforts on behalf of Trammell Crow and this development, I'd also say thank you to the commissioners for your time tonight. And just note that all of you at the City of Canby, we really do appreciate your efforts. These are strange and uncertain times. I think that's an understatement. And we understand that it's not always easy or convenient to do our jobs. We all have a lot of challenges that we face, distractions, not to mention just the concerns and care for our families, health and safety. So things get tough, and I know they've kind of been bumpy from time to time, but I just wanted to really say thanks to the City of Canby. We really do appreciate all that you've done in the past and now and hopefully in the future. So Greg, I'm going to kick it over to you. Thank you.
Greg, you're muted still.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Great. Greg Blefkin with VLMK Engineering and Design. We are the architect, engineer of record for this project, and we were also the architect engineer for the adjacent Shakespeare project. Happy to be back in front of you again, presenting Baker Center. A little bit of background on the property. Originally, we had a few more parcels tied up than the 21 acres that we're now dealing with. But the 21 acres worked fine for our needs. So we ended up, after multiple site plans, landing on the site plan that's in front of you. Consists of 3 buildings. The size of the buildings, the positioning of the buildings was very much laid out to try to provide a smorgasbord of market size offerings. So different tenant sizes. Buildings will vary in clear height from as low as 26 feet, maybe up to as high as 32 foot clear. That would put the walls at 5 to 6 feet above that clear height. The topography on the site really lended itself well to the layout. With all the loading, we placed the loading on the west side of the property. There's 28 to 30 feet of grade change from First Avenue down to, from Walnut down to the northwest corner of the property, which is kind of the low point within First Avenue. So we took advantage of that grade fall, and having the docks 4 feet lower, it allowed for a nice approach into the buildings. Even yet, to minimize impacts to the larger building, there's also a south to north fall on that west side. We will be putting a very slight slope in the floor. It'll be a 0.5% slope from south to north to take up some of that grade waste. Truck access, like I was saying, will be provided off of First Avenue. We'll provide 50-foot drives in there to accommodate safe maneuvering of the larger trucks in and out of the property. During the neighborhood meeting, we We heard from some of the neighbors, and most specifically some of the neighbors that are to the north of us on the north side of First Avenue. And some of the concerns that were raised at that meeting were the concerns of light glare, noise, screening. So we took the initiative to provide some pretty significant evergreen screening to buffer the truck courts and the drives to the extent that we could from the neighbors to the north. Fortunately, the location where the drive to the west ended up is between the drives of the two neighbors to the north, and in fact, there's a couple large trees that are directly opposite to it. In regards to traffic, I think Steve mentioned it. Columbia Distributing, their operations were a little bit different, not very descriptive of what you might find out of an ITE manual or a data for a typical warehouse. Their operations require trucks to be loaded early in the morning, and so a lot of their morning traffic is well before the AM peak hour times. In regards to the traffic for this project, as we don't have a known tenant, a known traffic count, DKS used the ITE manual, and when they estimated those 949 average daily trips and 132 AM or PM peak hour trips, they use data that has been accumulated over many years. How reflective is that data to what we will have? It's to be determined, but I think the traffic study, I think it would be a great idea to have DKS in to kind of review it, because there is some pretty good write-up in the traffic report that talks about the level of surface of those nearby intersections with and without the collector and connector from Walnut to Otto to 99. And it really didn't impact, with that connector, the impact was not significant. Although I think that connector would be a huge advantage for both the Shakespeare development and the Baker Center development. So I think we are fine with the condition that we as the developer notify our tenants of the required traffic routes. We just improved First Avenue from Hazeldale to Walnut Street as part of our Columbia Distributing project. That allowed the traffic from Columbia Distributing to continue west down First Avenue to Hazeldale to Sequoia, in lieu of it all being forced down to Walnut. So that has helped. And as we just improved that street, we improved 22 feet of it. We are now going to be extending it to a complete 25-foot half width plus the existing 12 feet. So there will be 37 feet of paved road out there. We will also be installing a water line and a sanitary line extending from Hazeldale up to the intersection of Walnut. And the depth of the sanitary utility is 14 feet deep at Walnut Street, and that was a requirement from Public Works to allow it to serve any future development that might occur when the properties to the north are annexed. Building type, I think that the Columbia Distributing is a pretty good example of the type of building you'll see. It's a concrete tilt-up structure, warehouse type buildings, clear heights ranging from 26 to 32 feet. We are putting some accent reveals and some articulation into the building facades by stepping panels, adding reveals, paint, and storefront. We also provided a very complimentary landscape plan and design to, again, buffer the truck courts from the street and traffic, and to screen the parking lots. And as Ryan indicated, we did provide an updated or revised landscape plan. Originally, we had a few more parking spaces. I think the count was 394. We may be down into the 380s now that we added a few more planters to more closely meet that planter spacing requirement. We will be looping some public utilities through the site so we don't end up with long dead end runs. We've been in communication with Canby Utility, and we will be extending primary power along First Avenue, street lights, and then secondary power down the west side of Walnut. We will also be extending a public water line loop through the building so that we can avoid individual loops or private loops around the building and provide an opportunity to isolate certain areas of the property. Stormwater will all be retained on site. Similar to the Shakespeare project, we will be collecting all runoff, roof runoff. We'll be routing directly into a series of storm chambers that will be buried at the depth of the dense gravel layer, which is 25 feet below grade. Stormwater treatment will be provided in filter vaults that will be positioned in proximity to these underground storage chambers. In addition to the street lighting, we will be illuminating the site with wall lights that will shine down onto the dock areas, shine down onto the sidewalks, ped connections, and parking. The photometric plan that we provided does have some slight bleed over of light onto neighboring properties, but it is well below the 1 foot candle and probably averages less than a half a foot candle. So we will be shielding the pole lights that are near the property lines. Parking count, and I think this was something that Ryan brought up. The one issue that, or the one condition I think that was added, 45, that's not in the report, had a condition to provide a cross parking easement with the plat. And the one parcel that is somewhat light on parking is tucked back in the corner. And right now we're showing, we have a landscape area there that we can provide additional parking as necessary. And if these buildings change and need arises that we need to address truck parking or trailer parking, we want to make sure we have the flexibility to accommodate that truck parking or trailer parking. And ultimately, we'd like to accommodate that in the backyard. But if we needed to add vehicle parking to meet a code requirement to forego the need for a reciprocal parking access on a plat, that might be something we want to consider or would consider. I think that about covered the architectural and engineering aspects of the project. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you, Greg. So Ryan and Chairman Savory, that concludes our presentation tonight. Thank you for consideration of our site and design review approval and also the partition approval. So we'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from any of the commissioners? Hearing, go ahead, Jennifer. Thank you.
Do you have intended tenants for this property, or is it all speculative?
It's all speculative at this point.
Okay. No Othellos or Romeos or Juliets or anything like that?
Yeah. No, yeah, that would actually make it easier, I guess, for all of us. No, I mean, the tenants that we anticipate here look a lot like the tenants that are already in the Pioneer Industrial Park, warehouse and distribution, service related companies, manufacturing. I think we could expect to see something very similar to the profile that's already out there.
Any further questions? Just by the way, I'm partial to Macbeth, so we can go from there. Any other questions from any commissioners? Are there any other proponents? Thank you, Steve. So thank you very much. Are there any other proponents that would like to speak? Any opponents? Anybody that thinks of themselves as neutral? Okay. At this time, I will close the public testimony, and we will move to discussion among ourselves and no additional testimony unless allowed by me. So what are your thoughts on this, Mr. Boatwright?
Mr. Boatwright, your microphone is not on.
John, did you hear me?
No, I did not.
Okay, sorry. This is Commissioner Boatwright. I think the project's a nice project. I think the streets are going to be great. I just have a problem with, I'm just unsure about the volume of traffic. I think, I'll be honest with you, I think that I will vote. I know that I will vote to approve of this project because the applicant actually reduced some of my fears because of he said the traffic would be, but half of it would be between 1 and 6 a.m. at Shakespeare. So that did a lot for me. We don't know how much traffic these other these other three projects will eventually accumulate, but I don't think that I will deny it because of that, because of my doubt about that. But to the planners in the planning department, if I'm going to have a hard time voting to do anything else in that particular area of the industrial park until we get some firmer answers on traffic. But I will vote yes tonight. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Commissioner Trundy, what say you?
I think it sounds like a good project. I'm for anything that's going to add some jobs to the area, which it sounds like this would, and increase our tax base. I think that they've thought it out very well and are being very cognizant of the feelings of the neighboring church, cemetery, buildings, businesses. So I don't see a problem with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
I'm ready to support the project, John.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor.
Yeah, I too am ready to support the project. I do have concerns about traffic, and I think that is something that we need to discuss and figure out. Although I don't think that it's necessarily the responsibility of Mr. Seaver and Mr. Blefton. So I think we need to get something together to figure that out.
Totally agree with that. Commissioner Hutchinson.
My feelings is that the plan in the past included building industry in this location, which kind of makes it an easy decision. And I kind of think that for good or ill, we've kind of decided to put up with whatever traffic that generates. And if the licensed engineers who create the reports say that it won't appreciate it appreciably, I'm willing to go with that. But this is all granted, you know, I'm working downtown Portland, so my perception of what creates the perception of bad traffic is a little bit different than perhaps your local Canby resident. So, but in any case, I'm in favor of the project.
I too work in downtown Portland. I feel your pain. Commissioner Moultrie.
I'm a proponent of this. I think it's a great addition for the industrial park in general. Unfortunately, to be able to have the money to do the road improvements and have the pressure to do the road improvements, we need things like this to continually push us. So I'm a proponent.
Thank you. I think I got everybody. I agree with previous comments, and I will be voting in favor of the project. If I could have a motion to approve.
This is Commissioner Modern. I vote to approve. Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me.
I do. That would be City File DR 20-02 and PAR 20-02 Baker Center.
I second.
I'm sorry, this is Ryan. Sorry to interrupt. Because we did identify an additional condition of approval tonight in the presentation, it would be ideal for you to either approve it with or without that.
Do I hear any objection to approving this with the additional condition of approval, number 45? Okay, I think we can move ahead on that, Ryan. So all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No, there are no
John?
nays. Yes.
Oh, John, I was going to suggest a roll call, but I didn't think we had any opposing, so I guess it's okay.
Okay, thank you. I should have done that. I apologize. So thank you. So the project is approved. So we will move on to final decisions, which mirrors what we just did, and I will entertain a motion for a final decision, to approve a final decision for DR 20-02 and PAR 20-02 Baker Center. Ryan, we have
Yes.
a typo here. Is it Baker Center or Baker West?
Baker Center.
Okay, so my agenda says Baker West. Baker
Aye.
Center.
Yes, Baker Center.
So I will entertain a motion for a final decision on that.
So moved.
Have a second?
Derek, seconds.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. We will move on to items of interest from the planning staff.
This is Ryan Potter. I just wanted to note that Sandy Freund, for personal reasons, has resigned her position. So we wish her well in her new job out of state. So for now, if there's any questions that you would normally have for the planning director, you can direct them towards me or the interim city administrator or Lainey, or any of us are here to help you if you need.
Okay, now my agenda says that our next scheduled meeting is August 24th, but I'm hearing more likely that it's September. So
That's correct. August 24th, we are seeking to cancel that meeting.
all righty. Any items of interest or guidance from the planning commissioners to staff? By the sounds of the crickets, I'm assuming not.
Chair Savory,
Yes.
I
Commissioner-
just wanted to say that I appreciate all of these transitions that the planning staff is going through, and that I know it's not easy. And I think it's good that we're canceling the meeting on the 24th so that they can get a little chance to maybe get their feet under them and get caught up a little bit.
I would totally agree with that, but you know that Lainey is being given a vacation, and I'm not quite sure that we can really approve that. I mean, that sounds so out of character. Out of
Oh, I
line.
think Lady needs extra days
Extra days.
with all of y'all.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
So
move
moved.
to adjourn.
Okay, and all in favor, say aye.
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 Everybody have a really good evening. It's a beautiful evening outside. Get out and enjoy it. Thank you
Enjoy
very
the
much.
bats.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.